Welcome to A Date with Darkness podcast, where I will be discussing the impact of hurtful and abusive relationships and how to overcome them so that you can move through your pain and get to the kind of healthy relationships you want, need, and deserve. I'm Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist based in California. While I hope that you find this podcast educational and informational, please note it should not be substituted for treatment with a licensed mental health professional. Also, due to the nature of the podcast, some of the information presented on the show can be sensitive to some of my listeners, so please note that listener discretion is advised. Hello and Happy New Year. I am super excited to be back here talking with you guys. I know it's been a minute since I've released a podcast, and there's been a few different things going on. Namely, that I've been sick for the past month and a half, like really, really sick. Sick to the point where I couldn't get up out of bed. And it doesn't appear to be COVID, but, I definitely felt pretty doggone terrible. And it was pretty touch and go there for a little while. So I'm super excited to be back. And believe it or not, even though I've been sick for a long time, I'm still not 100%. But at least I am, my voice is back on track, because that was another thing that I was having a lot of trouble with. My voice would just randomly go out. I don't know if you've ever been sick where you've been like coughing, or you just like, you have these random things, random times where you just sort of lose your voice. It's been really, really weird. And, I'm in California right now, Northern California specifically. So our weather here, we've been experiencing a lot of rain and a lot of flooding. And so the weather hasn't really helped. But I've being sick, the way that I've been sick, I've been confined to my house. So I really didn't have the urge to leave, but no matter. I'm super excited to be back here with you guys and glad to have a chat. And, if I'm feeling up to it, if we're able to kind of push it out this week, hopefully, we'll be able to release a couple of podcasts, because this one I've been wanting to do since prior to the holiday, but I was in bed during the holidays, being sick and whatnot. So even though this podcast was on my mind, it could not come to fruition until now. But so that just goes to show that even though I didn't get it out, I was still thinking about you guys. And so you guys are always top of mind. And, another quick note, is one, I know that I've talked about the coaching program and things like that, and that was supposed to be out. And I haven't pushed that out yet. It is still on the way for folks that are looking for individual and group coaching for narcissistic abuse. There's been a couple of things that have come up that have, in addition to me being sick, a couple of wonderful things that have come up, which hopefully I'll get to share with you guys soon. That is sort of push the dates of the release date of that back, but that is still something that I am working feverishly to try to get out to you guys, because I'm super excited about that, as well as some other projects on the horizon, and can't wait to share that with you guys. Of course, you've got the Facebook group, A Date with Darkness. I haven't been active on the Facebook group for the past month and a half, give or take some time, again, because of me being sick, but I promise to be back up there and be more heavily engaged. I am still in the throes of recovery, so just keep that in mind, that even though I have all these things that require my attention, I am still not back to 100%. And it's very interesting being sick. I haven't been sick in quite some time, and I'm quite the little germaphobe. So, it's caused quite a bit of fatigue and, just that lack of energy in addition to those other sort of symptoms of like coughing and sinus and things like that. So it's very interesting just sort of having that. And then also having it in this way. I think this is probably one of the worst times I've been sick. So I don't want to ramble on too much about that because I feel like that's taking up enough time. But I hope that you guys aren't out there getting sick like I was, and that you're taking care of yourself, you're staying well, you're staying healthy. But I definitely want to get into some things. Um, and, around the new year, I'm one of those people, I really like setting intentions. I really like resolutions. I really like reflecting on the past year. And I'm all about self improvement. So, I wanted to share this podcast today. I want to talk a little bit about New Year's intentions and resolutions and just overall healing process. If you've gone through narcissistic abuse, if you've gone through toxic relationships, dysfunctional families, addiction, any of those kind of things, then I think that you will find the information that I'm going to share with you pretty useful because I think it's applicable across those situations. The first thing I want to touch on is talking about healing and recognizing that healing, especially relationship trauma healing, that is a lifelong process. I know that a lot of folks like to ask the question like, oh, when will I be fully healed? Or when will this be done? One of the things I'd like to tell folks is healing from relationship trauma wounds is like healing from a scar. It fades over time, but it's never completely gone. There's layers to the healing. And so recognize that healing is a lifelong process. And also, if you still have people that have negative energy or that are toxic or that are narcissistic, right, which you may very well have that for various different reasons, whether it be that you work with them, whether it be that you have children with them, whether it be that they are your parents or other family members that you for whatever reason you're still in a relationship with, or you feel like it's a relationship that you can't fully step back from. Regardless of what type of boundaries that you try to set up for yourself, and they could be as strong as ever. There's a lot of folks out there that talk about doing the gray rock method, which is basically where you make yourself dull and you don't engage in abusive and dysfunctional behaviors. Those things are not foolproof. And regardless of what type of armor or what type of shield you put on when you go into battle with these types of folks, that there is still going to be an impact on your life. And it's going to have a ripple effect in other relationships that you have in your life, whether you realize that or not. And it's not until those relationships are fully gone or that you've fully taken a step back that you can actually see the full scope of how these relationships impact you. And I'm just going to be honest here. And I know that folks feel like, if I could do this boundary, or if I could do this thing where I could sort of limit contact, those are self-preservation mechanisms, but those are also mechanisms that are based on survival. And survival is different from thriving, and you don't know how to fully thrive until those relationships are non existent and are not pulling from you energetically. And that is a different way of moving through life. And so that's something that I want you to think about, how those relationships have a ripple impact. And, another thing to think about is, everybody has some sort of trauma, right? Or some sort of relationship issue, right? Or most people, I should say, relationship trauma or relationship challenges or difficulties are not an excuse for any type of behavior. So those things are not an excuse for abuse. Those things are not an excuse for showing up as an adult with challenges and things like that. Those things you can understand about yourself, but they do not excuse your behavior or pain or trauma or just dysfunction that you inflict on someone else. It does not give you a pass, essentially, to inflict that pain onto someone else. And so you are responsible as an adult to do your own inner healing work and to look at that and be very introspective and do the work. And you could do the work in several different ways, whether that be through therapy, whether that be through coaching. And, the way in which you do the work can also evolve over time, but it definitely needs to be with an objective professional. That's what I always recommend, and I stand by that. It's not something that I think that people can do over time. You can have some insight into some of the behaviors that you're doing, but again, trauma wounds are layered and they have themes. And oftentimes when I'm working with my client, even if it's the same relationship pattern or behavior over time, there's often different overarching themes that may come up, whether those themes be abandonment, whether those themes be rejection, whether those themes be codependency, whether those things be neglect or self-esteem or what have you. So different themes can come up even with the same type of issue. And sometimes, a lot of times, that's why you see wounds repeating or behaviors repeating over and over again, because there's a different lesson to be learned. And, even me, I'm like, oh, sometimes I these things happen, or, I find these sort of patterns or these types of people in my life. And I'm like, oh my God, what is it? Why am I not done with them? And it can be super frustrating. And it's because there's more work to be done. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the lesson that I have to learn this time around is the same thing that I was learning last year or the year before, but there's something else. And even though I'm working through it, there's an elevation through the process, but I just have to learn something new this time. So being open, being kind, being patient, and just sitting with myself, processing my emotions, journaling, talking about it, doing the work, getting all of the feelings out. Okay, so that's the first thing there. And the second thing I want to say that, I'm learning and that, I kind of want to talk about is people have to earn their place in your life. And I've talked about doing relationship evaluations before. And so this is kind of along the lines of that. But, I'm going to delve a little bit deeper, in Black families or with Black folks especially, or people in general. There is always the sense that, or we're kind of getting it from all sides, from society, from our own family, from our own peers, that, just because someone has a specific title, that they have a role in your life. For example, there could be something like, oh, well, that's your mother. So you always have to work to keep that relationship, or you need to show up in this way, and you need to make an exception or excuse behavior because that's your mother or that's your father, or you owe these people something because that is a relationship that you were born into, and they have this assigned title whether you want them to or not. And that's sort of hammered in. And I think Dr. Sherry talked about this a little bit when she and I talked on the podcast, where she was talking about, if people are if you experience abuse in your relationship with your parents, people have more sympathy for your parents than they do for you. And so if you tell people you don't want a relationship with your parents, their whole thing is like, why? And there's all this sort of pressure to like, you need to conform, you need to act right, and you need to get it together, and you need to, work through your stuff, or you just need to get over it and make that relationship work. And this is something along the lines of that, where, I've seen people sort of assign these titles and say, well, that's my mom, that's my dad, that's my whoever. So I got to make this work, and I have to sort of suffer in silence. And I myself have done that. And, I've decided that as of this year, I'm releasing the chains from that concept, that people really have to earn roles. They really have to earn titles. Now, that's not something that you just get to keep because, we have a specific bloodline, or we have, in the history, in our history, we've had this sort of relationship where maybe we've been friends in the past, and I may have felt obligated to the friendship. No, that's something that's a role that you have to continue to earn. Otherwise, you don't have that title anymore. You no longer feel obligated, to be in a relationship, or obligated to perform a role. Access to me, my life, my mental space, my energy, my personal space is earned. If I feel disrespected, that is quickly revoked. And for me, this is something that I probably need to work on too. I'm one of those people that disrespect, it's not taken lightly, and it usually has to be a big thing that really sort of violates my morals and core values. And maybe I need to take a closer look, and it doesn't need to be, as big, or it doesn't need to sort of be this sort of big, profound issue before I consider it to be disrespectful. And so that may need to be something that I reevaluate, that I can change my mind about the place you have in my life at any time. I don't owe anybody anything. I don't. The only person I owe something to is myself. And so this is me, thriving in my life. So anyone who sort of takes away from my energy or violates my values or my morals, they are out. I don't share, personal things. I don't allow you to have access to me in that way. Anything that I value is kept close to me. So, um, that's all I'm going to say about that. I think you guys get the gist about that, and hopefully, there's some takeaways that you have from that as well. Hopefully that will help. That history and titles and bloodlines and things like that doesn't matter to me anymore. I'm more interested in your actions, your character, how I feel when I'm in a relationship with you. If you are proving yourself to be consistent, reliable, and trustworthy, and if we're on the same page, we're on the same vibration, we're on the same wavelength. If we're not, then you are just an associate. And maybe you're not even that, depending on how I'm feeling. But I'm really trying to, sort of put people in their place in my life. And that's, that kind of happens. Because I'm 43 now, and I'll share that with you. I'm 43, and life and what I'm taking away from life has a different meaning for me. So I value experiences. I value time, and how I spend my time with people. And again, I've been through some relationships that have taken me through the ringer, and I'm not putting the blame on the other person. I'm just saying that, like, I'm not interested in doing that anymore. I'm not interested in being around people that sort of pull from me energetically, that I'm not interested in being in relationships that are one-sided. I'm not interested in being in relationships where people talk about you behind your back. So it's important for me to be surrounded by people in my life that have mutual interests. And the number one, characteristic I have to have in my relationships is reciprocity. And so that means I have no space for people that are energetically draining, that are narcissistic, that are abusive, that are codependent, that have addictions, people that are not invested in our relationship that we have together emotionally, people that keep secrets, or that betray you. And I've had a lot of that. I've had a lot of that in family situations and friendship situations where people are betrayed, and I've given them chance after chance after chance. And one of the things that I've noticed about myself, um, you know, in the past is that, and this is, I think this can be a trauma response. I know this is a trauma response. Um, is having a delayed reaction and sort of putting people in their places or putting people where they need to go. Because whenever you have a history in being in traumatic or abusive relationships, it is hammered into you from the very start that you need to put their needs ahead of your own. You don't really have a say so. You don't have a voice, and so you have to meet their needs before you meet their own. And so, part of being in those relationships is sort of, you have to, as a defense mechanism, you have to compartmentalize. So compartmentalizing means that you're putting your pain, your hurt, your anguish, and things like that on a shelf, and you're not really allowing yourself to process all of the stuff that has been done to you that is inappropriate in a relationship. So I've even caught myself having a delayed reaction, and that delayed reaction can then show up as anger, or someone can say something, that person that has hurt me can say something, and then that'll trigger it. And then I find that I don't want to be in that relationship anymore. Or someone will bring up something, and then we'll have that discussion. And then it's like, this is totally inappropriate. These are the kind of things that go through my mind, where I'm just like, oh, this is so inappropriate. And oh, this takes me back to when you did this other really huge inappropriate thing and we never said anything, or we kind of swept it under the rug. But now I'm going to address all of that now, and I'm going to act accordingly in this relationship, so we don't have a relationship anymore. Or, I'm going to take a step back from this relationship because you have been very hurtful to me. And so I've noticed myself doing that, and I'm trying to be better about sort of processing things in the moment. But again, and I am better about processing things in the moment. But again, sometimes there are still some delayed reactions from where things may have been compartmentalized years ago, and now they come to the forefront, and you really think about it, and it's like, damn, that was messed up. And now I need to take action on that, because if that person did this thing to you, and this thing was so heinous or so hurtful or such a deep betrayal, this person doesn't mean well for you. They are not in your corner. They cannot be trusted. And so you need to nix that person, or, not, you're not really in the relationship that you thought you were with that person. So taking off the rose-colored glasses and seeing things appropriately. This is a huge part of self-reflection, like reflecting on what I could do better. So each time for me that I have an issue that comes up, I am journaling, or I'm talking about it in therapy, like, dang, what could I do better? How could I, going forward, how can I be better? Or how could I have handled this more appropriately? That is more protective of me, and that is more respectful of me, and where I'm acting in a way that I'm not people pleasing, or just, trying to go along to get along. Thirdly, I want to say this thing. So I've had relationships this year, just as I mentioned, and I want to mention this very important thing, because I think sometimes when you're caught up on social media, or when you're caught up, sort of, when you've been in abusive relationships, or you've been in dysfunctional relationships, what people do is they over absorb information, right? Because they're invested in healing. So you might be on TikTok, you might be on YouTube, you might be reading all these self-help books and, trying to self-diagnose, doing these online quizzes, reading these online blogs, just super saturating yourself with information. And so you're feeling like you have all of these issues. And I want you to, one of the things that I'm learning and that, I'm going to put out there to you guys is letting your emotions be your guide in relationships. You have emotions for a reason. And if you don't know what your emotions are, there's a lot of people that have been in traumatic relationships. And I'm just going to toss this out there. You need to know what your emotions are. Your emotions provide information. They provide data, and you need to be able to identify them. If you don't know how to identify your emotions, you need to go online on Google, and this is free. You can Google a feelings chart or a feelings wheel. It's one of those big things with a bunch of different types of emotions, positive, negative, in between. And this sort of helps you identify your emotions. And this is a practice and a skill that you need to learn how to go through to start identifying how you're feeling. Um, but when you are in a relationship with someone, your emotions can be your guide. So, for example, if you are feeling anxious in a relationship, right? Like, for example, dating someone, I've dated people in the past and I felt anxious or unsettled or just like really worried all the time that like things weren't going okay. Even if they said that things were going okay, their lips are telling me that things are going okay, but I'm feeling in my body like anxious, like they're not calling me back, or, they're not doing the things that they said that they were going to do. Those feelings are giving you information, and that information may be and is often a sign that your needs aren't being met. And for the right person or for the right people, those feelings, unless there's something more going on, unless there's a personality or characterological disorder, or there's a severe mental illness or some other things that are going on that can be pathological. But if they're just your generalized anxiety, right, or feelings of abandonment, for the right person, those feelings won't be too much. And again, they shouldn't be all consuming emotions. So again, everyone's situation is different. So I want you to keep that in mind. This isn't a one size fits all. But I'm learning that for myself, my emotions are a guide for me. And they're not pathological because they're not, I can manage them, but they do give me information that, hey, my needs aren't being met, or this person isn't being consistent or truthful with me. And instead of me calling that out or really speaking to that, what I'm doing is I'm trying to overcompensate, people please, or just sort of keep the peace type of thing, or not rock the boat, when I need to be honoring how I'm feeling and acting accordingly. Um, Now, feelings and thoughts are not facts. So I definitely want to put that out there. Feelings and thoughts are not facts, meaning that feelings and thoughts can provide you information about yourself, but they are not facts about the other person per se, or facts about the relationship. But what you do need to do is you need to honor them. You need to be more mindful, and you need to think about what they're telling you, right? And it doesn't mean that because you have a feeling, like you can love somebody, but you don't necessarily need to act on that, right? You could be angry with someone, but you don't necessarily need to act on that. You might need to sit with that and figure out what those feelings are all about and sort of process that before you take any actions. And oftentimes I do try to sit with emotions before I take any actions, but they do give me information about what's happening within myself. If I'm feeling that a need is not being met, or if I'm feeling disrespected, or if I'm feeling like, even if I'm feeling like me and this person are connecting really well, if we're vibing and I'm really liking the space that we're in, so they can be positive, negative, and like I said, in between. So I want to make it clear that I'm not just trying to speak negatively here. I think this is something important to mention because again, if you have been in a historically abusive, toxic or traumatic relationship, what happens is you tend to not trust your emotions or other people tell you how you should be feeling or they dismiss or minimize your feelings. And so you don't really know how to gauge or you compartmentalize so much and so you sort of try to dull down your emotions or check out, and so I encourage you to bring your feelings to the forefront because your feelings are genuine, they are bona fide, they are valid. But there's ways that you need to learn how to manage them. And again, this is a case by case basis. Everyone is different, but hopefully that provides you some information there. Lastly, what I'll mention is this. The dating world has changed a lot. Dating and just people in general have changed a lot, even over the past 2.5 years, however long COVID's been going on since we're in 2023. So since 2020, since COVID has gone on, people feel like they have a lot of options. And so even just like in dating and things like that, you've heard me mention even before on like the ghosting episodes or things like that. Um, what I'm noticing about myself, and what I really like about myself is that I have integrity in all of my relationships, or I try to make sure I have integrity in all of my relationships, which is why I mentioned making sure that, I'm in alignment with like my relationships are in alignment with people who have those same values and who are acting accordingly. And if they're not acting accordingly, I am the type of person now where I'm being mindful of that and I'm communicating that. And I think that's also another thing that happens. As you're healing, you learn to communicate better. You learn to communicate what your needs are. You learn to communicate and say, you know what, that's really hurtful or that's really inappropriate. And I'm not saying that I'm 100% where I need to be, but I'm noticing that that is coming out a lot more. And I really want to be in a place where, and hopefully that you guys are in a place where you can sort of speak on things like in dating or in friendships that like, you carry yourself with integrity and you say, I don't really like how you're doing things, or, I really appreciate how you did that for me. But where you can sort of start to speak about how you're feeling, what you're noticing in relationships with people, and having that integrity, not just with the other person, but first and foremost with yourself, right? Where you can actually speak about things. And if need be, you can do a caring confrontation. In caring confrontation is where you can say, listen, this is what I'm noticing that's happening with you. I'm noticing that this behavior is taking place in this relationship, and this is how I feel about it. And I feel like, you could even say like that. I feel like that really hurts my feelings, or that really hurt when you did that, or that was really upsetting, or that made me feel like you didn't care, blah, blah, blah. And you could say it in a way that's not accusational, but you could state what the behavior is, um, your perception of it and how it made you feel. And you could use your voice and you could communicate what your needs are, and, what needs are being met or what needs aren't being met. If there's going to be consequences to that behavior, but, treating people in a way that even if they don't do this, even if they don't have integrity with you, you can still have integrity with them, and you could sort of act the way that you need to. I want to say this also too with a caveat. The caveat is you do not need to be nice to everyone. In fact, I don't recommend being nice to everyone. You could be kind to people, but you should not be nice to people. Nice people often do not get their needs met, and they're often not well respected and can be ran over a lot. People they mistake niceness for weakness, and kindness means that you could be respectful, but you want to communicate your boundaries. When you're nice, you don't really have boundaries, and you're just kind of like you're people pleasing, and you're trying to be the person that doesn't rock the boat, and you're trying to be likable. I encourage you energetically. It's not in anyone's best interest to try to be likable by everyone. You are for some people are for you, but you are not a one size fits all for everybody, and that is okay. And that's actually how it's supposed to be. Um, and so, when you're nice to people that are abusive and that are toxic, you're giving yourself energetically to a person, and you are putting yourself in harm's way when you do that. So I encourage you to be kind and have integrity, but be firm, be assertive, say what you need, say how you feel, and act on that, in that way, and communicate. So your voice is important. Speaking up more is very important. So I hope that this has been helpful, but these are things that, intentions that I intend to work on a lot more, things that are being improved upon, um, but, still continue to need more work in the new year. And from one person speaking to another, that if you're watching this, you're listening to this, we've shared some similar experiences in going through relationships that weren't always healthy. And so, my wish is for you that, for people that haven't been so kind to you, that haven't been so loving to you, or that have been hurtful to you, you can bless those people, and you can release them, and you can move on with your life, and you could be happy, and that you could be fulfilled in other relationships and with yourself, despite everything that's happened, and you could be the best version of yourself possible. And so that's where I'm going to stop here. I appreciate you all for tuning in and listening to me. And, I'm excited for the podcasts that are coming in 2023. Got some special shows coming up for you. Some of the things that I definitely want to incorporate more of is talking about, I've spent a lot of time on the show talking about what women have experienced from men, and I definitely this year want to talk more about like what men have experienced from women in terms of narcissistic abuse, because I think that those are very relevant topics. And so I've definitely got some special shows planned and coming up for you, and my plan is to hopefully finish getting well so we can pump those out for you and get all those wonderful programs and the coaching and things like that launched, so that I could see more of you, help you guys continue to work through this stuff and continue on your healing and self-love journey. So until next time, you guys take care of yourselves. Be well. Bye-bye.